My name is Cadence, and this is Lizzie.
Hi.
And this is our guidance counsellor, Mr. Bird.
Hello.
We would like to welcome you to the St. William's Wonder series.
Mr. Bird,
Yeah.
why did you choose to be a guidance counsellor?
I originally chose it because I thought that I would be good at it. But that also plays, I think, into something that the Japanese call the ikigai, which is that you can find a state of oneness in the work that you do if you can find something that balances what you are good at, what you love, what people need, and also what you can be paid for. If you can find something that balances those four elements, you're in your ikigai. You're in your, I guess you'd call it your vocational zone. And that's what it's like for me. So that's why I picked the work originally. But thankfully, as I've gone through it, I found that no, this actually suits me on a lot of levels. And it's good work that I get to do.
Mr. Bird, why did you choose to work at St. William's?
In the beginning, I actually worked out in the country. And when I moved back to Brisbane, the opportunity came up to work here at St. William's and at my other school, which is about only like 5 or 6 minutes east of here. And so the two schools came up together, and I thought, look, this isn't too far away from where I live. I'd like to give it a go. It's an age group that I think suits me at that time. So I applied, and I was fortunate enough at the time to get it. So that's how I ended up here. And that was over 10 years ago now, pretty much.
How long did it take to study to become a guidance counsellor?
So I went down the psychology pathway for becoming a guidance counsellor. Some counsellors start off in different fields, either as teachers or as social workers, and then they move across later. If you take the psychology path, you are looking at a 3 years bachelor's and then a 1 year honours program or something similar to that. And then after that, you are looking at something like a 2 year master's program or something similar to that. So it's a field where it is fairly hard to train people up in the last few years of that education pathway. So there are other avenues that are open to people who are interested in becoming psychologists, but for whatever reason, they can't get into the master's program that's available. Yeah. There's also doctorate programs in certain fields, but not in the type of psychology that I did, which was about education and development. So overall, adding it up, and at one point I moved from one university to another, it took me 8 years of study to get to
That's
so
a long time.
it's a journey that's not for the faint-hearted, I think. And so for any, and this will of course be you kids in a couple of years once you're wrapping up your ATARs in year 12 and everything else, when if you're thinking of going on to do tertiary education, have a good sense in your mind about how long that path could take. You wouldn't want to be wasting your time necessarily doing something and then realizing, oh, look, I'm not too hot on this, because it's years that, you might not get back. You don't want to rush the decision, but at the same time, you can't take forever, because 8 years, I started straight after uni and I only took one break for 1 year when I worked for a year. So it took me 9 years after finishing year 12 to finish that whole training pathway.
That would be a very long time.
Yeah, so by the time that I actually started working as a psychologist and as a guidance counsellor, I was like 27-ish years old, So, and adults these days generally only work until they're about 65, which sort of meant that I had about 40 years to start making some money and paying back the HECS debt that was left with me after studying for 8 years. So consider very carefully what you want to do for your profession when you finish school, right?
What's your favourite thing about St. William's?
Ooh, I like how at this school the staff are so good, but everybody's a workhorse. You kids might not fully appreciate that because, I don't know, you might think that everything here is just happens between 8:30 and 3. Yeah. But there's a lot of work that the staff do behind the scenes, particularly leadership.
We get told a lot.
Yeah, I don't think they go home, basically. They pretty much live here and work. And the teachers are pretty close to that too. So all the teachers here are really dedicated to what they do. Everybody. So I think that would be my favorite part. And they're really, really smart and really, really talented. So they're good people to work with. It's a strong team, which is, I think, really important because there are some big challenges that come along when you're trying to run a school and run a classroom. So that would be the thing that I appreciate the most.
When you retire, what do you want to do next?
That's so far away. I'd like to think, But that's probably fewer than 30 years away for me. So I hadn't given it enough thought at this point. I think that sometimes this is something that you might learn in psychology too, if you ever do any subjects at high school on it, or if you ever do electives on it at university, is to be too preoccupied with the future can make you anxious, because mentally you're spending too much time there. But if you are spending too much time in the past, this can make people depressed, because you're thinking too much about lost opportunities and regrets, right? Yeah. So where then, if thinking about the future too much can make you nervous and worried and anxious, and thinking about the past too much can make you depressed and regretful, where's the good place to be thinking? Where? In the present, right? So things about like retirement, I haven't even thought that far ahead. I'm just thinking about, well, how can I make the most out of today? How can I get as much work done this week? How can I appreciate the weekend as best I can? But retirement, oh man, that's forever away.
Yes, it's like you don't focus on like the future, you just focus on like the present, like right now, and you don't just worry about it. You just keep your eyes on like what's happening right now.
Yeah, and your ability to predict what's going to happen into the future is so thin. I mean, all those smart people at the Brisbane Bureau of Meteorology, they couldn't even predict what the weather was going to do, right? Last Thursday, accurately. I've got no idea what's going to come around in, 30 years away. We're talking about almost 2055-ish, right? Like, I've got no idea what's going to happen, So, and to think about that too much is probably a little bit of wasted energy, But if I can think accurately about like, how's the rest of my day going to play out? Can I squeeze in a little bit of extra stuff here and there? Can I be really effective about getting this stuff done in a timely manner? Those are things that I can control to a certain degree. But as for things that are 30 years away, that's too much unpredictability for me. So I can maybe set things up so that they might land the way that I'd like by the time I get to that age. But besides doing a little bit of preparation now, there's not a lot that I can control about it.
Yeah.
So, you girls would say the same thing. It's a little bit tricky even to know, well, what about the camp? Right, you couldn't even control that the camp was going to happen the way you wanted, when you wanted, and that was like a day ahead.
Yeah, and everyone was like so excited, and they were like, "Oh, we're going to go on the camp," and then like the next day we're like, "Oh, well, it's getting cancelled. I'm probably going to think like character builders is really going to be bad." But once we finished it, we're like, "When our character builder is going to come back, we really want to do it."
Yeah, it was really good. So I think it's good if you can if you can be optimistic about the future, but not be too concrete in your expectations for the future.
Why do you wear dark colours?
Because it's slimming. No. I don't know. I'm not too big into colours generally. I find that black goes with a lot of things. So it's easy to coordinate. You girls might appreciate that yourselves too, right? When you're buying more of your own clothes and you're really paying attention to fashion and stuff.
Yeah, we are lately now.
Do you remember the famous, he's dead now, but the famous CEO from Apple, Steve Jobs?
I've heard of him.
Yeah, you might not see many pictures of him now. You were probably too young when pictures of him were doing the rounds, but he always was famous for wearing black turtleneck, long sleeve sweaters.
Oh, yeah, I think I've
That
heard
was
of him.
all that he ever wore.
Yeah.
But apparently his reasoning for that was because he found it more efficient to just have one outfit that he could wear every day and not lose time thinking about, what am I going to wear today? What am I going to pair that with? What am I going to throw in the wash? Yeah. So it's also a little bit of that too. If I just wear black every day, basically, it's one less thing to think about every morning. Yeah, it saves me time. It's also iconic now because it's almost become a meme within the school that you can always guarantee that I'm always going to be wearing black no matter what day it is. It makes me identifiable when all the ladies are wearing bright, colourful colours and I'm just there, just in black, just lurking.
Like you're like the old one out. You're just standing there like,
yeah.
I like being different. I don't want to be the same. Like,
yeah.
I want to stand out. I don't want to like just be the same as everyone else.
Yeah, so because I'm kind of stealthy and everybody else is in colours, I actually almost stand out more because I'm the only person who like never wears colours.
Yeah. What do you like to do outside of school?
I like to stay healthy. I like to play computer games. I like to read. I like to spend time with my dog Hugo, actually, who you girls know pretty well.
Yeah, he's really cute.
You have some questions about Hugo, I sense. Do you have questions about Hugo?
Yeah, we do.
What's on your mind?
What does it feel like to help others with their problems?
It is a rewarding thing to do. I think that a lot of the staff here are doing that all of the time. You don't even necessarily need to be the guidance counsellor in the school to be helping people with problems. I think it's a good thing to do, especially as a profession. And this is something that you girls can think about when you get older. But for me, I might feel a little bit hollow if my work was only something that made me wealthy or a company wealthy. But if you get to work with children and you get to work with people to help solve problems, then you're doing something more valuable than just building wealth for yourself or someone else.
Yeah.
So that comes back to that ikigai thing that I was talking about. You know, it's good if you can have a life path that pays, but it's more important to have a life path that you find rewarding and that people need. And there will always be people who are in need of problems to be solved.
Yeah. Like, if you ever like need someone to talk to, you can just like go to you and like.
Yeah.
Or like
so it's good.
anyone else that could help you, and everyone would just understand you and like keep your secrets safe.
And I'd say here too that the teachers don't come to school for the money. If they were in it for the money, they'd do something else, right? But they're here to help the kids. That's why they do it. That's why they put in the extra time. Because, teachers don't get paid extra time for the number of hours that they do after work. They don't get paid extra for coming in super early and meeting with parents or giving up their lunch break to call up somebody's speech therapist or their tutor or their pediatrician or their GP. So really they do that stuff for the love of the opportunity to help the students, not for what it means to their bank balance at the end of the month or the fortnight. So I think you'll probably get to see the value in that kind of thing too when you're at that working stage of your life, which won't be far away.
How long did it take to train Hugo?
Oh, that's a good one. And I think that probably most of our listeners and parents would know by now who Hugo is. They've probably seen him around. Yeah. But Hugo is the 4-year-old cavoodle therapy dog that we have here at the school, and he works here on the 3 days that I am at St. William's, and he also works at my other school 2 days a week when I'm there. So his training began when he was around 10 months old. We lined it up so that he would probably be finished at about age 1. So, because generally a therapy dog shouldn't be working younger than age 1, but you also need to do something called a therapy suitability assessment to make sure that the dog has the right personality for the job. So Hugo's training happened over the course of about 2 or 3 months. We were doing a training session basically every week, and then I would have homework of my own that I would do with him between sessions. Some dogs apparently can take longer. It depends on the dog, but of course, as you girls would well know, Hugo is quite gifted, so he had it all wrapped up in a couple of months.
Can you tell us a bit about Hugo?
Well, let's see. So he's a cavoodle, which means that he's half poodle, which are a very intelligent dog, and he's also half Cavalier King Charles, which is a very affectionate, people-centered dog. So he's got a nice blend of being smart and trainable and following instructions, but also likes to be around people. He probably likes to be around people more than he likes to be around other dogs, really. He's got an easygoing temperament. He adores the kids. He adores me, which is nice. He's young and fit and healthy and smart, so the work that he does is good for him, even though he's more expensive than most dogs because his health has to be really good and his diet has to be really good, and the amount of care that I put into him is more than most dogs require. But I think that he's been good for the school overall. Would you girls agree? Do you think it's good having him here?
He's a really big help.
Because like whenever everyone else sees him, they're like, "Oh my God, it's Hugo!" And then like they feel comfortable around you, and then like they just settle down, and so they know that you can trust them. And like
well, he's probably the second most staff member we have after Mrs. Saunders. So he's sitting right behind me.
He's like a celebrity.
Yeah, he's pretty much a celebrity here. I'm basically just this talent agent.
You'll never hear walks past someone, "Oh, can I pet Hugo? Can I pet Hugo? Oh, Hugo's so cute."
Well, you've seen it. When you girls take him for a walk, and I say, what part of the job is that we stop like every 5 meters because as soon as somebody sees him, we have to stop for like a 30-second pat. Yeah. But that's part of the job. That's part of his job. So.
Why did you choose Hugo for his breed?
Before I even wanted to adopt him, I'd already done the research into what breeds would be good for the job. I knew probably about a year or 2 prior to adopting Hugo that I thought a therapy dog would be of benefit to the school. It was just about planning it. When I'd made the decision on the breed based on research, I then did a lot of research on good breeders, right? People who raise dogs and train them for those first couple of months while they're still just very young puppies. When I spoke with the breeder that I'd selected, and I explained, hey, I work at these schools. I'd like for my work to be supplemented by a therapy dog. She said, well, look, that's such a noble thing to do. I'll give you the pick of the litter. And that basically means I'll let you pick the best of the bunch. So part of it was me picking Hugo, but realistically, it was actually part of Hugo picking me. So the day that I met him, he came up to me and like fell asleep on my foot. And I thought, okay. And he actually wasn't the first dog that I was considering. But looking back on it, he had the best temperament for the job because he reacts to like nothing. And he doesn't have a nasty bone in his body. Even if the kids like pat him too much or are pretty rough with him, even if he gets a bit overwhelmed, you just see he just wants me to pick him up. Like he doesn't growl, he doesn't bite, he doesn't give anybody any side eye, he doesn't give any kids any attitude.
He's like well trained.
Yeah,
Like, so you can trust him to not like bite, scratch, or anything.
Yep. So he's got a good personality for it, and he has done the training well. And the kids here at St. William's have been like tremendously gentle with him and stuff. You know, even the little preppy kids who can sometimes be a little bit, they can find it hard to control themselves. Like everybody has been super good to Hugo since he started, which was 3 years ago.
Yeah, so I bet like when the preppies first on, they're like, "Wait, you have a dog in your school?" And then like go crazy. They run around and they start patting the dog, and then
they swarm him.
Yeah, and then so the Hugo's just like, "What's going on?" And then they just like he just wants to be picked up, and then he's like, and
then once he's up in my arms, like 8 kids can be trying to pat him at once, but he's cool with that because he's a little bit higher up. And you've even seen it when he comes to my office. Sometimes he's up on the table, lying on a bed, because when he's up high, it helps him to like feel regulated. Kind of thing. Like, you know how even kids have their own things that they do to steady themselves out. So I'm going to take a break, I'm going to drink water, I'm going to, read a little bit, I'm going to, whatever it is. That's one of his little things that he likes to do. Gets up high, he feels chilled out, gets him away from the hustle and bustle down at ground level.
How does Hugo help you?
I think, oh man, depends on how. Like in all sorts of inventive ways. I think that Hugo's really good for kids who are feeling anxious or are kind of being a little bit wayward, which I mean when they're sort of misbehaving. Because there are things that children and adults will do for an animal that they wouldn't do for a person. Sometimes it's good for like a student to have a bit of a body break. We know that they need to take some time out of class, or we need for them to sort of, go from one place to another, because maybe they don't want to go to church, or maybe they don't want to walk to assembly on their own, or maybe they don't want to say goodbye to mum in the morning or something like that. So I find that where Hugo is useful is if you use him as a device to get people to willingly do something that would be good for them, but at the time they're too overwhelmed or they're too upset to do the thing that would help them. But if you basically say, hey, by doing this, you're helping Hugo, like they'll happily go along with that. But if I said, if you do this, it'll be good for you, they'll be like, no, I don't want your help. I just want to be with mum, or I don't want to go to assembly, or I don't want to leave the classroom. I don't want to stop playing. But if it's like, hey, could you take Hugo for a little bit of a walk because he needs a body break, he needs a drink, and he needs a poop, or he needs a whatever, which he always needs, right? Like you could say, oh yeah, I'll do that. Like I'll do that for Hugo, even if I wouldn't do it for myself. And adults are the same. People look after their pets way better than they look after themselves. I spend way more money on Hugo's health than I do on my own. And kids will willingly do things for Hugo that they wouldn't do for themselves, even if it would do them good. And so that's one of the most useful ways I find with Hugo, is get kids to think more about him and not think so much about themselves. Don't tell the others, that's a secret.
Which classes get to do rock and water?
That is based on the year level that needs it the most at the time. The teachers and I generally start thinking about that at the end of 1 year, and then in the next year we'll make good on that decision. It generally ends up being year 4, but not always. I've done rock and water with year 2s, I've done it with year 6s. I'd love to do it with 2 or 3 year levels, and I'd like to do it maybe 2 years in a row with the same year level, but there's only one of me and there's 507 of all of you, so I can't quite make it the whole way across the school. But once Mrs. Saunders puts me on full time, we can probably start doing rock and water with the year 6s again, because that's a real question, isn't it? You want to know when year 6s are going to do rock and water again. That's fair enough.
What's rock and water?
Rock and water isn't something that I came up with. An individual, I think he may have been from Finland, Scandinavia somewhere. His name is Fredrik Järma, and he was the one who established rock and water. There's a really, really interesting story about this that I could tell you, but it basically goes that in his home country, he was a PE teacher and a counsellor.
Oh, that's cool.
Right, yeah. And there was a series of youth crimes that were happening at train stations, right? And which was really, really weird because their society is very safe. Lots of respect for the elderly, lots of solidarity among the youths. But there were these crimes that young guys were committing, and the government got pretty worried about that because, like, these violent crimes are happening among these teen males. That's unusual in society. In our society, that doesn't happen here. So they put together a panel of people to try and figure out what the deal was and to think about something that they could do. And this had teachers, and this had, counsellors, and it had professionals and psychologists, and it had him. And they put together this government initiative program that was going to look at how you could help these boys that were sort of causing these problems. And then they rolled it out, and he had another think about it, and he thought, actually, I think that this is missing the point. We're probably putting too much focus on just the perpetrators of the crimes. We're not thinking enough about the people who actually fall victim to those crimes. So he said, we need to upskill not just the boys, but we need to upskill the other people around them. So he went back to the government and said, hey, I think we're missing the point with this. We need to do something that everybody can participate in. We need to teach people how to be more like water and be more relaxed and friendly and peaceful, but we also need to teach people how to be more assertive and protect themselves and stand up for themselves and everything else. And the government said to him, look, we've gone too far with the first program now. We're not turning it around. It's too late. He was sort of crestfallen about that. And what happened, though, was one time he was riding his bicycle home and he was hit by a car and he was put in a coma for like 8 months or something. And they weren't sure if he was going to wake up. But when he woke up and came out of it, the nurse said, can you move? He's like, I'm not sure if I can. Do you think I can move? And she's like, I don't really know. You've been in a coma for almost a year. And he said, look, get me a laptop. And she said, why? And he said, because I need to type something. And what he did was he typed up the whole lesson plan, the whole curriculum for Rock and Water, which came to him while he was in this coma. And he got all the tools together and he had everything assembled, and he went back to the government and said, hey, I've got this plan, I've got these tools, I've got this program, we could do this. And they said, no, the answer is still no, we can't get this off the ground. So he then tried to get it off the ground in Australia. He was in Sydney and he was running it in a small, like a rural community. And in an Indigenous community, and it gained more traction there. University of Sydney became interested in it. They took it on, and then from there it spread out. So even though he's not Australian, it started in Australia. And so the Rock and Water also has those First Peoples elements to it and everything else. You can really go deep in it, but I didn't come up with it. But when I heard about it, I thought this is really good, and this is something that could be good for the kids too. So I've been doing it, I think, in the school. Once I was trained in it, I think I started doing it around 2016 or 2017. Wow. A while. Yeah. So I've been doing it here for a while, thankfully.
Why do we have to learn about Rock and Water?
You don't necessarily have to, but I think that the skills that it teaches are good for everyone at every age. I think even as adults, like, it's really important to know that, hey, I've got to put relationships ahead of my own goals, but that doesn't mean that I can just forget my goals all of the time. Like, balancing that need for assertiveness, but also peace and friendship, like, that's hard to do. Adults find that difficult to do. Students and children, I think, can find it really hard to do as well. Yeah. You probably know yourselves, like, when it comes to the boys, what do they usually have too much of? Is it rock or too much water?
Probably rock.
Use probably rock, right? They get too stubborn about getting their way and talking up and maybe mouthing off and maybe causing fights where a fight wasn't required. Yeah. Whereas with girls, it's more the opposite problem, right? I don't want to cause trouble. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to upset my friends. I don't want to make anyone cry. Yeah. So learning how to balance those two elements in people, that's hard at every age, but I think it can be particularly hard for children and teenagers. So it's good to be on the front foot and have a little bit of exposure to that now before you leave for high school.
Yeah.
Did you ever think you'd become a guidance counsellor?
I did not. I originally thought about being a pediatrician, actually, when I was in high school. But then I looked at that and thought, well, I don't really know how I feel about doing such extreme hours, right? Because being a specialist surgeon or doctor or something, they're in pretty rare supply. So if you're going to pick a profession like that, you really have to be prepared to potentially be doing 70-hour weeks, which is a lot of work, because most adults under normal circumstances are only working maybe somewhere between 35 and 40 hours a week. You can do that sort of work and it can be very rewarding and you can make a lot of money. But I was thinking, no, I'm not prepared to sacrifice that much of my life for that sort of field, even if it would be good. But I thought, in psychology, the hours are a little bit more balanced, but I can still be working towards the people that I think need the help the most, which is students and children. So that's why I ended up going with the psychology field, even though I didn't make that decision until I was pretty much already at university.
A question for Hugo again. Why did you call Hugo in the first place?
Mrs. Bird chose that name. She thought it would be a good one, and I thought, I think it'll suit him. So we decided upon that name a long time before we even met him. But do you think it suits him? Do you think it's been a good fit?
Yeah, it's been, it kind of sounds like, but it's the opposite of Bart's evil brother, Hugo. It's the way opposite of that. Way opposite. Bart's evil brother's, evil, and he doesn't like anyone, and he wants to, ruin people. But then Hugo, the dog, on the other hand, is just, kind and,
opposite.
loves everyone, is, whenever someone goes near, it's pat me, I need a pat.
Yeah, I can't take the credit for that name. She thought it up, but I'll let her know it's been a popular choice.
I think the reason why we probably think it's a good name for Hugo is because that's the only name we've known him by.
Yeah.
So I think we all just know that that's his name for sure.
Well, he was born as a Buddy. His original name was Buddy.
Buddy.
Yeah.
That kind of suits him.
I feel like Hugo does more.
Yeah, but Hugo suits him better. I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that.
Thank you for being a part of our podcast today.
That's right.
Mr. Bird.
It was good.
Yeah, thank you so much. We've enjoyed having our time get to know you.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too. You did very well. Thanks, girls.
Thank you.